Hi everybody, this is Dr. Fouladian and we're going to review second part of the integumentary system. So we get to the dermis. We talked about the two layers of the dermis, papillary layer and reticular layer. Now some structures that we have in the dermis related to the dermis are wrinkles, stretch marks and tension lines. So as we discussed, specifically, the reticular layer of the dermis is composed of dense, irregular connective tissue, right? And as we already have discussed in the connective tissue, that all those dense, irregular connective tissue, they are a bunch of the collagen fiber that they go alongside each other, but each bunch of them goes in different directions, right? That's why when we cut them, we have the collagen fiber in bundles that they are moving together in different directions to give the tissue, like the tissue of the skin, the strength in all directions, right? So the interwoven collagen fiber provide tensile strength. You remember that the collagen fiber, they are flexible a little bit, but they are resisting the tension. We cannot make them to get longer to be tense, right? The elastic fibers that we have in the skins allow the skins to stretch and recover. So due to these two fibers that we have in the skin, we have the normal skin that is resistant to tension and also is able to stretch and recoil, right? But we have some changes that happens, such as, for example, wrinkles. Wrinkles are due to the aging that makes changes in the collagen and elastic fibers. Changes in the hormone levels may cause wrinkles, and also the UV light that they are breaking these fibers, they may cause the wrinkles. So these are the wrinkles that are happening due to the changes that they produce in the collagen fiber and elastic fibers of the skin. So besides that one, extensive stretching, for example, during the pregnancy, or sometimes excessive weight gain, like suddenly a person with a frame of the body excess too much gain that makes the excessive stretching to the skin may cause the collagen and elastic fibers to break, and therefore it cannot return back to the original position, the original shape that it has, the original strength. The skin does not recoil and the skin wrinkles and creases, resulting in stretch marks, for example, in the pregnancy. And the tension lines, that's the other condition that we have. The other name for them are cleavage line. Those are coming because of the collagen and elastic fibers have a tendency to organize themselves in a parallel pattern, right? In certain areas of the body, there is a pattern of cleavage lines or tension lines due to stress or to a specific type of the movement of the body. And I will show you the picture. It is like a mapping over the body that these collagen fiber and elastic fiber, they move in a specific directions and therefore we cannot change it. Now, if we want to do, for example, a surgery over the surface of the skin, we have to get along the line of these collagen fiber and elastic fiber, not to cut them in the transverse cut, right? So we have to cut alongside the fiber so that we have the minimum damage to them and therefore minimum scar, right? So that's the use of knowing about all these tension line and cleavage line. So here in this picture, you see all those cleavage lines here that, like, for example, in this area, the collagen fiber and elastic fiber are moving in bundles in this direction. If there is a mole here and you want to remove it, you cut in this direction, not in this direction. If you cut in this direction, you have cut lots of the collagen fiber in this other direction, and healing them may cause the scar to collapse. Here you see how the cleavage line and tension line looks like on the anterior side, and this is on the posterior side. Pay attention that these are not over the surface, not over the epidermis. These are at the level of the dermis, the collagen fiber and elastic fibers that we have in the dermis. Now, the other dermal component that we have in the dermis, network of the blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and the nerve fibers that we have over there. So, blood supply to the skin that we have generally arteries. Arteries are vessels that bring the blood out of the heart toward all around the body. Veins are the vessels that bring the blood back toward the heart from all around the body, right? So we have arteries and veins that form a plexus. So plexus is a network of the interwoven network, like a net, like a fishing net, right? So when we have arteries and veins all together connect, we call it a plexus. The same may happen for the nerves or the other structures, right? So we have a cutaneous plexus, and then we have a smaller blood vessels that form the subpapillary plexus. Subpapillary plexus, as the name is saying, is under the papillary layer of the dermis. Cutaneous plexus is between the cutaneous layer, skin, and the subcutaneous layer. We call it subcutaneous plexus. The functions is thermoregulation, as we discussed before, and blood flow to the skin is regulated to help maintain constant flow to other tissues of the body. As we said, sometimes we may have the low blood pressure, therefore the blood vessels in the skin may get tighter so that the less blood come to the skin. As you know, skin is a very covers a vast area of the body, therefore lots of blood coming to the skin. So if we preserve the blood and prevent them to come to the skin, they can be preserved to go to the other vital organs of the body, like for example for the brain, for the heart, for the kidney, right? So those were the function of the blood vessels. And nerve supply to the skin, the function of them is control blood flow to the skin, because each blood vessels need a nerve to come to that, to order that they should dilate it, get bigger in diameter, or they should contract it and get smaller, right? Adjust gland secretion rates. Those are the ones that bring the order that should this gland, sebaceous gland, sweat gland, secrete more or secrete less. And monitor sensory receptor, as we discussed, that they take the sense from all around the body regarding the somatic sensation and take it all to the brain. Right? And the examples of those are like, for example, of those sensory receptors that we have, the tactile disc that we discuss about them, like these are for the light touch receptors. We have Raffani corpuscle. Corpuscle is any round structure like a small ball. They are for the stretch, the stretch receptor, and lamellated corpuscle, that they are like an onion, that like they are going in round around each other in lamella, in layers. They are for the deep pressure and vibration receptor, that you need to know these points, that which receptor is transferring which sense. And here you see two examples of the tactile corpuscle that we already have discussed, that they are under the epidermis here, and you see the lamellar or lamellated corpuscle. So that was all about the skin and the cutaneous membrane, as we call it. We talked about the two layers of that and all the characters. Now let's go into the subcutaneous layer under the skin. As we said, we call it hypodermis, that's located under the dermis, is deep to the dermis, called the subcutaneous layer. Under the cutaneous layer, also referred to as the superficial fascia, as we discussed before. And that, as we discussed, that's not technically considered a part of the integumentary skin, but it's part of the integumentary system. And it helps to stabilize the integument by attaching the skin to the underlying bone and muscles and supplying it with the blood vessels and nerves that come into it. Subcutaneous layer consists of adipose tissues mostly, but it has some areolar tissue too, and it contains the major big blood vessels. And due to the location of the vessels, we have terms such as the hypodermic needles and subcutaneous injections, because when we inject, for example, any material into the body, if we want to inject directly into the blood, so we go and find the blood vessels, but other than that, we don't want to inject into the blood. Therefore, in this area, as these are all the vital organs are out of this area, that's a good place. So, for example, blood vessels are located locally, is not all spread into the hypodermis. Therefore, it's a good site for the injection, so that the material goes into there and release steadily but slowly, not sudden at once like when we push into the blood, right? So we have the hypodermic needles, those are the needles that we use, and the subcutaneous injection, the type of the injection that we use to inject into this area subcutaneous. Now let's go over the accessory structures of the skin and the subcutaneous, like hair follicles, sebaceous glands, sweat glands, nails, and sensory receptors. We're not covering much of the sensory receptors as much we discussed so far, but let's go over the other parts. So regarding the nail, the function of the hair is to provide protection for the tips of the fingers and toes, right? So as we have a thick layer over there compared to the skin that is softer, it can protect it. Besides that, pay attention that this is making a hard surface on the top of the, in this position, on the top of the fingertip, so that when you push your finger over a surface, it prevents prevents the fingertip to get back and be soft, right? In other words, it makes it a surface for pressure on that, so that the pressure of this being able to be applied over this surface area of the fingertip to touch better, specifically as we have it, most of the touching of the other things and the objects is done over this one, so having the nail helps a lot for that. The structure of a nerve, structure of a nail includes a nail body that covers the nail bed. I will show you all the picture that is like a nail body. Under that we have a bed, nail bed. We have a nail root that is located at the very end of the nail that goes under the skin, deep in the dermis near the bone. And lateral edges of the nail, like these two lateral edges that form the lateral nail groove and lateral nail folds. I will show you the picture to see that. Another major structures to identify are eponychium. Nychium is the term for the nail, and eponychium means above the nail, hyponychium means below the nail, and lunula, that's we have a part that looks like a moon, like at the very end of the nail before the skin we have a lune shape white area that is shape of the moon. We call it lunula. And we have free edge, that is sides that we cut when it gets long, and proximal nail fold. Now let's go over this one and see them over the picture. So you see the nail here, you see the free edge that gets long, and you have it gets long and we cut it, but actually the growth of the nail is from the root that is located here at this edge, and it goes under the skin in this area. We have the nail body, the hard surface that we just see here, and under that we have nail bed. You have this moon-shaped area here that is white. We call it lunula because shape of the moon. And this edge is called eponychium. This part that the skin here is attaches to the nail here. Eponychium here. And we have under this free edge, we have other area, that part where this part is attaches to this free bed is called hyponychium. I will show you from the side picture and you will see that one. And this is the proximal nail fold, the part of the skin that is attached here. That is the one that sometimes gets separated and the water and other things goes into and triggers the nerves and becomes very painful. So if you look from the side to the nail, you will see that this section is two sections. It's actually one that is the long side of the long axis here that you see in this area, and the other one that has been cut transverse in this direction, and you will see that in both parts. So you see the phalanx that you have, the bone in this part of the third part of the finger here, and then phalangeal bone you see here. Around that you see all the dermis area and all the other structure haven't been shown, like the tendon and other things, but then you see the epidermis, and then finally you see the upper part of the epidermis. So as you see, epidermis, dermis, and phalanx. Now go back here and you see talk about the nail. You see the nail. This is the nail body, and under that you have the nail bed here in this area. You have this hyponychium under this free edge where the fingertip is attached to the nail. You have eponychium in this area, and then you have this part that is the nail root, and the growing happens from this end of the nail root because we have a stem cells, basal cells here that they divide and push the nail up and then gets longer here. And we have the proximal nail fold as I showed you. So these are all the parts of the skin, part of the nail. So after the nail, let's go to another accessory structure, that is the hair follicle and hair. Hair and hair follicle can be found everywhere over the skin except palms of the hand don't have hair, soles of feet don't have hair, sides of the finger and toes don't have hair either, although you have on the back or dorsum of the fingers you have hair, but you do not have on the sides or on the fingertip or on the whole palm, and also for the sole of the feet. What else? Lips. Turns out they do not have hair. Portions of genitalia like glands of penis in male, clitoris in female, labia minora, and inner surfaces of labia majora. They do not have any hair. So these are hairless parts of the body. As you see, some parts of them are thick skin, like palm of hand, sole of feet, and side of finger and toe, and the other ones are thin skin. So here you see the hair. these parts that are coming out, and we note them as hair. You see that they are continuing a little bit down here and go here, and then the structures that are covering inside part of the hair is called hair follicle, that you can see that as this sleeve or sheath around the hair. Now let's go talk about all these. So again, this is the one that I just showed you. Regarding the hair, the part that is coming out of the skin is called hair shaft, or shaft of the hair. This part that you see outside, we all see them, right? So those are shaft of the hair. Then it's not just up to here, it's up to here is called a still shaft. Then after that we have hair root that continues all the way down. So hair in general composed of hair root and hair shaft. So the part that we see, that's a continuation of the shaft of that. Now if you look around that, you will see that you have some layers around, and you see also some glands, like here you see a sebaceous gland that is connecting to the hair, and when they have secretion, we call it sebum, they come into the hair, and as the hair is growing and getting out, all those material that are oily get out, and besides that covering the whole around the hair, they go over the surface of the skin, and those sebum are giving the shiny looking of the hair and the skin. And if there is any problem with those, the hair and the skin becomes dry, right? And also here you see a muscle, a very small muscle that we call it arrector pilar muscle. Pilar in general means hair, so that's a Latin word for the hair. Arrector pilar muscle is the muscle that when contract and gets short makes the hair to stand up straight. That's the one that we call it goosebump, right? Now, in this picture, as we have a closer view, I like to grab your attention to look at the skin around the hair. You have epidermis and epidermal ridge here, and under that you have the dermis, papillary layer, and deep into that the reticular layer, right? Now, if you pay attention, there is a continuation between the epidermis and all the surrounding tissue of the hair. It is as if that this hair has been put over a surface and then pushed inside that. Therefore, it brought all the tissues that they were on the surface alongside itself, and now it has a covering of that tissue around it. Later when we go to talk about this, you see that these are actually the epithelial tissue. And then the outer layer of these ones also is a connective tissue, the same as the tissue that we have on the epidermis here, that all together cover all around the hair. And at the end of the hair root, you see that you have a hair bulb. Bulb is called this end of the hair root that you see that becomes bulge, becomes like a bulb, like an end of the green onion that you see that is bulged like a bulb. That's the hair bulb, the whole area here. And in the middle of that hair bulb, you see that you have the indentation toward the inside, inward, that we call it hair papilla. So this area is called hair papilla, and as you see, an artery, tiny artery goes into that. That's actually capillary, and capillary is much smaller at the very end of an artery, and then loops back and goes toward the venous side. This is the one that is taking part in the nutrition of the hair and keep the hair alive. Now let's go over more detail about the structure of the hair. The hairs are hair themselves, the one that we said that it has a hair root and hair shaft. There are non-living structures that are formed in the organ that we call it hair follicle. So hair follicle is the living part. That's the one that it has alive cells that they are nourishing the hair and make it to grow and all those ones. Hair by itself, those are just like the surface of the skin that they are dead cells. Hair themselves is a dead structure. It's composed of dead keratinocytes. Now hair production. Hair consists of the hair shaft, as we discussed, extends from the skin surface, hair root that anchors the hair to the skin, and hair matrix that produces and composed of three parts: medulla, cortex, and cuticle. Oh, I'm talking about cuticle. I forgot to mention that eponychium that we had that is connecting part of the skin to the nail here in this area. That has another name. Eponychium is called cuticle tube. So that's another name for this part. Now regarding the hair matrix is composed of medulla. Medulla always is inside, that is consists of soft keratin. The cortex is around the medulla, that is consists of hard keratin. And out of all these two, we have a cuticle. That I will show you the picture how these are look like. So that is the things that we have inside of the hair. That we said that those most of those parts are dead, right? Now we talked about the hair bulb and hair papilla, and I showed you the structure. Here in this picture, you're looking at what? What do you think is? Oh, it looks like very mysterious, right? That's actually the surface of your skin with all those keratinized dead cells over the surface of the skin that make the stratum corneum, and with the hair shaft that have come out of that, right? So if you look at the outer surface of the skin, you see the cuticles. All these ones, these are like shingles of the roof of the houses. These are just the cuticle that we have around the cells, and actually the type of the cuticle and the shape and many other characteristics can distinguish between different species, right? Or even sometimes different individuals, right? So now I will show you the picture of the hair, the cut section of that inside of the cuticle we have cortex, and then inside that we have the medulla. So hair follicle that is around the hair, and we say that that is an organ that hair is formed inside that, and it consists of three concentric layers out of the cuticle. It means that when we cut out of the cuticle, we see these parts: internal root sheath, external root sheath, and glassy membrane. Now let's look at them. So from the inside, after the cuticle, you have internal root sheath, external root sheath, and glassy membrane out of all of them. Hair follicle is covered with the connective tissue sheath that, as I showed you before. Now here we have a cut section of at the level of the root of the hair, that we can see the hair in the middle and the hair follicle around it, right? So from the inside, the hair structures, we have the medulla that is consists of soft keratin, this one. Then around that we have the cortex that is consists of hard keratin, and then around that we have the cuticle that is a very tough, as you saw, and it contains hard keratin 2. That is the cuticle. So up to this layer is the structure of the hair. Around that, the hair follicle starts. The hair follicle consists of internal root sheath, that is this layer. Then around that we have one external root sheath, that is this one. And then we have a glassy membrane covering the external root sheath. And out of all we have the connective tissue sheath, and sometimes we call this one as the dermal root sheath. So talking about those ones, in the longitudinal view, if we cut the hair along the length, also you see the hair shaft, and then continuation of that you see the hair root here, and here you see that you have the medulla of the hair, then around that you have the cortex of the hair, and around that you have the cuticle of the hair, right? It just has been finished here because the cut hasn't been completely straight. In this one you will see that has been completely straight. You see that it continues all the way here, the shaft, until it gets out of the skin. Then around the hair you have the hair follicle, that it has internal root sheath. Then after that it has external root sheath and the glassy membrane here, and finally at the end you have the connective tissue sheet or dermal sheet. And these are all structural. And here, just deep into the medulla, you have the matrix. The matrix of the hair is not dead. These are alive cells, and these are actually basal stem cells. The growth of the hair happens here in the matrix, that the cells are dividing, pushing the new cells up, and that's the way that the hair is growing and getting out of the skin here. And again here you see the hair, the whole hair bulb here, the whole area is called the bulb. You see the papilla in this indentation inward, and you see the blood vessels here. And here you see that around you have the adipose tissue of the subcutaneous. Now, regarding the functions of the hair, is protection from the UV light, specifically on the areas that we have lots of hair, like for example over the scalp of the head, or even from the eyelashes. When the light comes, it protects that the light doesn't go straight into the eye, and everywhere that we have lots of hair, that's the drawback. The other thing is insulation, that makes a layer that insulate the body. It applies mostly to the fairy animals that have lots of hair. Guards entrance to nose and ears, because you will see that in those areas we have thick and big hairs that prevent the the insect and all other things get into the ears or nose, and also prevent the big debris to get into. Movement of the hair sends impulses via nerves to the brain, because connecting to each hair we have a hair plexus, that we call it root hair plexus, that when the hair is moving, the change of direction and movement of the hair can be detected by these nerves that are attaching to that one. And that's the way that when it breathes, the charger. Sorry about the interruption. So we're talking about the root hair plexus, a plexus of the nerves that are attaching to the hair, and whenever the hair moves, we can sense that, we can detect that. Like for example, as I said, when a breeze comes, a wind comes, and you can detect that, that's because the hair is moving, and this root hair plexus can detect the movement of the hair. Or when a bug is crawling on your arm, right, you can detect it that The tiny, tiny ant is moving over your eye because it's moving the hair. And the contraction of the erector pili muscle, as we discussed before, and I showed you that even of the smooth muscles, pay attention that these are smooth muscles and those are involuntary, it's not under your control. That whenever those ones contract due to any condition, like it might be the cold or the stress, excitement, or many other things, then they result in their contraction and become shorter, will result in the goosebumps, that the hair stands out. This actually has been a protective mechanism in the fairy animals, that when all the hairs stand up, because usually the hairs have an angle with the skin. When they all stand up, all of them together can make a space between the skin and those all hairs, and they can keep the temperature under them. They can keep the heat under them. So this is actually a protective mechanism for them. But thanks God we do not have that much hair all over the body. So still we have this mechanism. So regarding the type of the hair, we have different types of the hair. The first hair that we have, we call it lanugo. Lanugo are unpigmented hair that develops after 3 months of embryonic development, and they remain until the birth, and even sometimes the baby is born with those hairs. Those are very thin, tiny hair over the surface, and even they do not shed before birth. Soon after birth, they just goes away. And then it replaced with other types of the hair. That one type is vellus hair that covers most of the body, all over our body. We have the thin hairs that we call them vellus hair, and the other hair that we call it terminal hair. We have them, they are very thick hair, and we have them over specific parts of the body, like the scalp of the head. All the hair are terminal hair over there, like the eyebrow, eyelashes, and also after puberty, many specific area, like the armpit or genital area that the hairs are growing, those are terminal. And so that was regarding the hair. Now let's go and review a few of the glands that we have as the accessory structure. The first one that we're reviewing are sebaceous glands, that as I showed you before, sebaceous glands are connected to the hair. So sebaceous glands are secreting the substance that we call it sebum, and the function is to lubricate the skins and the hair. It's found all over the body except for the palms and soles. On the other hand, you will see that sweat glands, we have one type of the sweat glands, lots of the sweat glands in the palms and so on, but we do not have any sebaceous gland for the palms and soles. Sebaceous glands found in high concentration on the forehead, face, and upper back. And if you notice, these are the areas that after or around puberty, you may find acne over there, because they have some secretions that sebum that are oily. These sebums by themselves, they have antibacterial property. They're protecting the skin, protecting the hair and all those ones. But if there exists, if we have lots of these secretions and the sebum become thick and just blocks the exit of the sebum, then they may become infected, and at that time makes the acne. And if it's a big part of that happens all together, it may cause freckles. So furuncle or when a big acne, you can name it like that, that a big part happens. We have another term that we have large sebaceous glands that we call them sebaceous follicle. And if they become inflamed or infected due to the bacteria, it's called folliculitis. So the term of the folliculitis comes from the sebaceous follicles. So that was regarding the sebaceous glands, right? That are producing sebum. Now, sweat glands are other types of the glands that we have in the integumentary system. We actually have 4 types of the sweat gland. We have apocrine gland that they produce sweat. We have this type, eccrine glands. These are another type of the sweat glands. But besides these two, we have 2 types that they are kind of modified sweat gland. It means that they do not secrete sweat. Their secretion is different. First is ceruminous gland. That is a type of apocrine gland, and they are producing cerumen. We're going to talk about that. And they're located inside of the ear, external ear. And the fourth one is a mammary gland that is another type of apocrine gland, and they produce milk. So these are all types of the sweat glands. So the gland's function is lubricate the epidermis, excrete waste, and assist in thermoregulation. Is regarding the apocrine gland and eccrine glands that are located in the skin, and they produce sweat. So for the 2 types that they are producing sweat, the first type is merocrine gland, that's also known as eccrine sweat glands. Their mechanism of secretion is merocrine or eccrine. If you remember from the epithelial tissue at the end when we were talking about the glands, exocrine glands, we talked about the mode of secretion or the method of secretions, and we said that some of them are called merocrine or eccrine mode of secretion, and those are the ones that they are make their secretion to exit out of the cells through exocytosis, right? They make some vesicles and pour their secretions out. So that's the case for the merocrine sweat glands or eccrine sweat glands. They exist and function from the time of the birth, and they found all over the body. So even the babies have these spots, right? They have it all over the body. They found in high concentration on the palms and soles. So when they have lots of these secretions, your palms may get totally wet, right? They produce sweat for their cooling purposes. So it's kind of survival mechanism. This sweat is called sensible perspiration. The perspiration that you can sense it, right? Content of these secretions, they have the sweats that they produce, they have water, salt, and acid, right? So that's the usual sweat that even a baby has, that if you kiss a baby and you may feel it, right? It has been sweat, right? So the other type of sweat gland are apocrine glands. These were different from the eccrine or merocrine gland in many aspects. They start producing sweat after puberty, and the high concentration in armpit and nipple region, the areas that they start producing sweat, and they have these sweat glands after puberty, and those secretions are odorous, and they smell bad because besides having water, salt, and acid, they have some oil and protein. And if they stay a little bit in their contact with the air, they may cause the bad odor. Their secretion may contain pheromones. Pheromones are a specific smell of the creatures that the other type, the other ones may attract to them. And like for example, the baby can sense her mom or his mom just by the specific pheromone of the mom or dad. These are the secretions that babies smell in order to detect and feel safe with mom. Males have these secretions as well, as I said, and the mechanism of secretion is merocrine or eccrine. Pay attention that even though they have been named apocrine gland, in assumption that their mode of secretion has been apocrine. You remember apocrine is the type that the apical part of the cell, it just goes away, the whole apical part. But then we see that still the mechanism of secretion is actually merocrine or eccrine, not apocrine. So actually both types of the sweat gland have their merocrine secretions. And both apocrine and eccrine sweat glands consist of myoepithelial cells. Some epithelial cells have the ability to contract and push the content out. Okay? So here you see that the merocrine secretions, one place that could be say like in the salivary glands, and now you know that in the sweat glands also you have those ones, right? So this is the whole process that you had it before, how the material produced goes through the endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, make the secrete and secretory vesicles, and finally through exocytosis gets out of the cells. This table, I just made it so that you can complete that. It's not complete in some parts. So for you to go and review them, compare the two categories of the merocrine sweat glands and apocrine sweat glands, and compare them regarding their content, as I explained. Go over their location of the body that they can be found, as I explained. They pour into the sorry. The difference is that the merocrine sweat glands generally, although they have different types, they pour into the skin surface. But the apocrine ones, they go to the hair follicle and through that one reach to the skin surface. The onset, we talked about the functions, and we talked about, and the pour into this ones we taught, and oh, that's repeated, and that's mistake in spelling too. So you can fix that one too. And mechanism of secretion, as we discussed, that's the only thing that is common between these two. So the other types of the sweat gland, we said there are modified sweat glands, mammary gland and ceruminous gland. Mammary glands are the typical type of apocrine gland. So the apical surface of the cell is shedding altogether, produce milk under the control of the hormones from the pituitary gland, that we're going to talk about it when we get to the brain and pituitary gland. And ceruminous gland, they're a special type of the apocrine gland, and they found only in the ear canal and produce cerumen, that they call it earwax, right? And provide minimal protection, again associated with the ear to prevent the insect and other the crawling things get into the ear, right? So that was the end of the chapter that you need to know. There are a few more slides after this that I just leave it there for you if anybody is interested. Just a few of them are regarding to the cycle of the hair, growth and replacement of the hair, that is discussing hair color, what determines that, some regarding sebaceous glands, sweat glands, and some regarding callus formation and aging and the integumentary system. So if you are interested, you can get into that one and just read about them or just refer to your books, and there is so much more about the hair and skin and the integumentary system. We just briefly covered the important parts. So hope you enjoyed listening and watching to this video, and then I'll be back with more videos regarding chapter 5. Have a great time.